Hello, it's Thomas Maher from PlanetF1.com reporting here from the Italian Grand Prix. It's the last of the European season, and here in the paddock it's full pack-up of all the hospitality units for the last time this year. All of these road freight units going back to bases all across UK and Europe for the last time this year before we start the flyway portion of the season. Max Verstappen won today, making it his first race win for Red Bull since the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at the start of summer. And what a day it's been for Red Bull. What a weekend in general. An unlikely pole position on Saturday for Max. And that was followed up by a tremendous race victory today. Lost the lead at the start. Well, he actually didn't lose the lead at the start. Himself and Lando Norris going toe-to-toe into the first chicane. Max maybe being a little bit cheeky, pushing Lando off into the grass on the run to turn one. Which Lando did bring up on the radio, labelling Max an idiot at the time. But Max ended up cutting through turn two, felt that Lando had released the brake in order to push him wide through the chicane, and Max eventually ceded the position. Well, he was told to cede the position to Lando, which he did. But that didn't stop Max. Within about a lap, he was back within DRS range. He lined up the McLaren on the run into turn one, and managed to outbrake the McLaren. It was a lovely move, very much the two guys braking at the last possible second, and Max got the job done around the outside of Lando. And unlike what we've seen through most of summer, he was able to pull away, just slowly but surely edged away from Norris, and with no interruptions in the race, no safety car, and the fact that it was a bog standard one-stop strategy, it was just a case of when would the driver stop. Max used a medium-hard strategy, came in, and the advantage that he had over the McLarens was exaggerated a little bit, simply because Lando and Oscar stayed out, hoping for that safety car, which never came. And of course, when they did pit, they took on the soft tyres to get to the end of the race. Just have to be careful. There is a Sauber truck making its way up the paddock. But yes, it was a dominant display for Max. Well, maybe not dominant, but a comfortable win for Max Verstappen, who said afterwards that there had been a little bit of a different approach to this weekend from Red Bull. They were less focused on what the simulator was saying, and it was a little bit more concentrated on the data, what he was feeling behind the wheel. And apparently there was a little bit of, I won't say disharmony or disagreement, but they weren't in full alignment with each other, the engineers and Max, on what to do with the setup. Max wanted less rear wing. Some of the engineers wanted a little bit more rear wing. In the end, Max won this argument, and it seems to have paid off. Now, afterwards, Max, he said felt like he was no longer a passenger in the car. The balance of the car feeling much better under him. And he paid tribute to the effect that Laurent Mekies has had since coming in. Helmut Marko was also one that highlighted the contribution of Mekies, labelling Mekies an excellent engineer. It's worth remembering, Mekies is primarily an engineer, and that is something that is different to what we saw under Christian Horner, who did not come from an engineering background. He was more of a business executive as opposed to an engineer. Did Laurent make all the difference this weekend? That's probably a little bit up for interpretation at this moment. Obviously, the messaging is that he has had a positive contribution in this regard. Helmut Marko very keen to point out Meki's contribution, but I asked Laurent to assess his level of contribution to this victory, and he told me that it was absolutely zero. He played absolutely no role in this. His role, he feels, is in appointing people to the right place and bringing out their talents in the right positions. And he said that's been fundamentally what he's concentrating on doing. And I think there's a sense that they are feeling this at this point. Now, the question mark is obviously, are Red Bull back? Max doesn't think so. He said he doesn't think that they're going to be in contention at every race. This is a track that rewarded the fundamentals of the RB21. He said once the downforce came off, they're good at high-speed corners, low downforce, complete opposite to last year, where this was their weakest display of the year. But this year, it's been one of their strongest, most comfortable wins that we've seen all year. So it really smacks to how It's a combination of the car suiting the track and possibly that different approach to how they set up the car this weekend. But let's talk about McLaren, because for the first time, I think this year, it was clear that McLaren were not in the hunt for victory today. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri coming home second and third. Lando coming out on top after what was a little bit of a contentious issue, I think, towards the end. So when the McLarens came in for their last one and only stops, Piastri was in third. He was second on the road to Norris. Piastri was brought in first. He was only 3.5 seconds behind Norris, but he was brought in first. Combined with the undercut effect and the fact that Norris had a slow stop, a mistake from the pit crew, this allowed Piastri to get ahead. So Piastri was second. Now, this is a championship fight we're talking about. We're entering the last third of the championship. And Piastri ended up ahead of Norris on the track, giving him the opportunity to pull away another 3 points in the championship over Lando Norris. McLaren realised they'd made a mistake, and they asked Piastri to fall on his sword, basically, by handing the position back to Norris. Now, Oscar did question this on the radio. He said, slow pit stops are a part of racing. I thought we talked about this. So he did resist it a little. But upon getting the request a second time, he decided against arguing the fact, and he did allow Norris back through. Now, is that laudable? Is that just sportsmanship over everything? I don't think there's any dispute here. Oscar was extremely sportsmanlike to not volunteer, but to willingly hand over, without much argument, to give back that second place to Lando, his direct championship rival. Now, he said afterwards that he felt the request from McLaren was a fair request. Once I got the second request, I'm not going against the team. There's a lot of people to protect outside of Lando and I. So, is it fair of McLaren to have asked that question? I think that's completely up for interpretation. What you can say is that both Lando and Oscar have performed absolutely as fairly and as sportsmanlike as they possibly could. Oscar definitely wasn't, while a little bit down, he wasn't annoyed with the team for having been made fall on his sword. And when they were asked in the press conference whether they would take the same approach in the last races of this championship, so really when we're getting close to the final, the tense races of this championship, say around Qatar and Abu Dhabi, both of them said that they would obey the team orders. Now, I find that absolutely incredible that drivers in a World Championship situation, both of whom are young and hungry, closing in on their first world titles, that they would be willing to put the team first ahead of themselves. Will that be the case when we really reach crunch time? Because if Oscar Piastri loses the title by less than 3 points this year, he can point back directly to this moment today as being the moment his willingness to be a gentleman could end up costing him big time in global sport. There's no guarantee that McLaren will have a competitive car going forward. So for him to willingly give up points to his championship rival across the garage, it's mind-blowing to me. And I think it really, really stands to McLaren that they have been able to completely get a lid on this. I asked Toto Wolff about this afterwards, obviously a man who has plenty of experience with dealing with this situation from Lewis and Nico 10 years ago. And he said that it's most important to have a clear strategy. It's either let them race or find complete balance, knowing that this could bite you. He said, obviously, Lewis and Nico are very difficult to manage, but he doesn't see the same situation at McLaren this year. According to Andrea Stella, he said there was a clear intent during that pit stop sequence to not change positions. They were covering off Charles Leclerc. So when it happened, they made the request of Piastri to concede, and it was all in compliance with their principles. But very, very laudable. An interesting end to the race and an interesting attempt from McLaren to find balance in the situation. So as it stands, Verstappen has a 94-point lead to make up. We are back in 2 weeks' time for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku. Stay tuned to planetf1.com